Hey everybody, welcome to my booth. I'm Jay, and today's sample is from Lucius. We'll give it a listen here in a second. Before we do, though, if you want me to review audio of yours, there's a form in the description. Send me something. If you'd prefer, there's coaching over on my website, if that's more up your alley. And then, as always, if you like this stuff and you find it helpful and you'd like to pay it forward, YouTube. It's got the YouTube buttons. You can click those if you feel like it. And a big thanks to our booth buddies. Lucius here is a booth buddy, and you can check out what that's all about down below. If it's just an extra way to provide support if you feel like it, and gives you a bit of extra, faster access to feedback just like this. Speaking of which, let's rock.
I fired my musket and struck one of the approaching devils. The smoke from my shot blocked my view, and before I knew it, the entire clearing was covered in gun smoke and powder residue.
Okay, pausing really quickly. Off to a solid start. So Lucius had questions about the audio engineering mastering going on here, as well as just general performance notes. So I'll talk about the engineering stuff towards the end, and we'll start with performance-focused things to begin with. So, like I said, off to a really solid start. Your pacing is great, and you have a very clear delineation of certain images. This whole sequence is like a battle sequence. And so battle sequences in particular in like audiobook scenarios like this, there are a couple of things that you can do that can help the drama, the suspense, the character experience and the listener experience, et cetera, et cetera. And one of those is one note that I've been given is when it gets hot, go cold or go cool, which is more to say that's a note from Pat Fraley and Scott Brick, whose class I recommend if you are looking into deepening your audiobook narration skills. Incidentally, I'm working on one of my own in that respect. Not a plug, just, hey, I forgot about that. But when it gets hot, go cold, what that means in effect is you don't have to drive the pace necessarily. You don't have to make things overly dramatic. The words will do a lot of that for you. So like describing battle sequences like this, you don't have to layer on top of it a bunch of emotional baggage. That said, the cool thing about this is, for example, in this first section, there's sort of a discrete play-by-play of what's happening, and it continues through this whole thing. And because this whole narration is in the first person, we can kind of use a first-person camera thing. And if you think about it cinematically, if you've seen battle sequences in film, one of the big things is that each bit of action is legible. And so taking this little first stanza, as it were, as an example, let's listen to it again and break down specifically what we're hearing and how all of the things I just blabbered on about can come into play.
I fired my musket and struck one of the approaching devils. The smoke from my shot blocked my view, and before I knew it, the entire clearing was covered in gun smoke and powder residue.
So there's a few distinct shots, as it were, if we're talking about camera shots and angles, that you can, and you being the general you, but also you, Lucius, we can lean into to further. You're already doing a good job. But there's first I fired my musket. Then I struck one of the guys rushing me. Then the smoke from my shot blocked my view. And then the entire field was obscured with smoke. So it's shot, struck the person, my view is blocked. Then the entire field. And just by that sort of, my musket fires, I see it strike, my vision's blocked, the whole field is obscured. That sort of play-by-play is a good way to sort of analytically break down each individual moment or camera angle that can help us build tension. Let's keep going and we'll explore that more.
Blackmore took an arrow to the eye, and Private Darby was hit by a stolen Spanish musket.
Cool. So this first section that we just broke down is like first person. I did this. I saw this. So it goes, I fired my musket. I struck the thing. My vision's blocked. Then the whole field, its vision is blocked. We're starting to zoom out at that point, and now we're panning around to our comrades here. This person was hit by an arrow. That person was struck by a musket. And so you see that I'm sort of naturally going there, instead of this telescopic view almost. And that can be a helpful way to think about scenes like this, or scenes that have this same sort of flow to them. Me, my vision, that happened over there. That happened over there. And then this next bit continues that.
Ironhide formed a group of 15 men to the west in a countermarch. 2 rows of musket balls piercing the jungle leaves put a dent in those barbarians' ranks.
So another way we can think about this is this first section of I fire my musket, my vision's blocked. That's my own experience, my being the narrator or protagonist here. I assume they're the protagonist. It's a first-person experience that's sort of harried. I'm trying to make sense of it, and the action is very, focused, which is typical for this type of situation, I think. It's here, here, here. I have a moment to step back now that the danger to the, immediate danger has subsided somewhat, and I can observe the goings-on around me. The entire field is obscured. This person gets hit. That person gets hit. Stress mounts. There's a rallying over here. Maybe a glimmer of hope. We can infuse that over there. There's some organization. That is, in the context of this battle, a positive for my potential survival, I would imagine here.
I ran my cutlass through a man's heart and felt an arrow breeze past my ears as I shoved the body to the jungle floor.
Now we're back into the sort of first-person point of view. That's happening over there. Then I'm rushed, and the sword action happens.
Corporal Eaton had managed to reload and sent a musket ball into a savage's neck as the brute charged my position. I moved backwards to get closer to Ironhide and his firing line. Another volley was loosed before the sergeant screamed out his cadence, and then silence.
So you're doing a good job here at the end, and then silence. And this whole passage is kind of the chaos of this battle sequence. This happens. I see something happen there, over there. There's an organization moment. I'm going to try to make my way over there. I have to do this, that, and then silence. So we can drive to that final point in a way. And it's important to note, when I say drive to that point, again, when it gets hot, you go cold. I'm not saying to pick up the pace. I'm not saying to layer a ton on top of it. You don't need to put a hat on a hat by making it more dramatic than it already is. But it's important to note here that it is a dramatic sequence. And so having a sense of that, it is, this happens. Then this happens. And differentiating those things, I think, will be helpful, because right now, everything somewhat lives in the same level of presentation, where if we listen to each discrete section, they're kind of at the same level or intonation of performance. And just by imagining them in different areas where we have to look over here, we have to look over here, little things like that will already pull it apart even more and help us to drive to the and then silence, which is a really lovely button for this type of thing, because it leaves us in the moment of suspense. What happened next? Are we going to make it out of this? What's going to go on from here? And that helps us to propel the story forward. So those are my big performance notes. A lot of little ideas, but let me know if all of that kind of jives. And then in terms of the audio processing and engineering. Overall, I think you've done a pretty solid job here. My biggest note is the you've got your S's and sibilant frequencies. The tend to be a little sharper than the rest of your speech here. So I would recommend potentially using a de-esser or something like that EQ. So here in Adobe Audition, the de-esser, and this will just help to tame stuff. If you don't know how to use this, I've got other videos talking about specifically how to use a de-esser or EQ to tame those sibilant frequencies. But that's my biggest note. It's not egregious to the point where I'm turned off from listening to the story by any sense. But it would, I think, improve a listener's experience if you tame those a fair amount. Additionally, I'm not sure what kind of microphone you're using, but it sounds like you may be using a dynamic microphone. Just because there's...
I fired my musket and struck one of the approaching devils. The smoke from my shot blocked my view, and before I knew it, the entire clearing...
If you listen into the back, there's just this subtle, like, shh, 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 which isn't bad in and of itself, but down the line, depending on your goals, condenser microphones for like more professional audiobook narration companies like Penguin Random House asks that you use a condenser microphone. Not for that reason, but it'll just give you a slightly cleaner signal to use a condenser. And it's possible that your audio processing, because it sounds like you've got a bit of compression going on here, as well as some sort of gating or expander coming into play. And because the gate and expander turns the audio on and off, I don't think that the average listener will flag this in any real sense. So take this all with a bit of a grain of salt. But if you were to the gating and expanding, it just has the sort of pumping effect of where we hear that dynamic microphone. I'll just call it the dynamic microphone down at the bottom end of things. It's possible that subliminally folks will pick that up and it'll be like a and you could just subtly improve by addressing that. Anyway, I'm happy to talk more about that if you wish, so feel free to shoot me an email if you desire. But all in all, mate, really solid work, and let us know where we can find the stuff. As always, for everybody else who submits stuff, if you're submitting a piece that you're working on, always make sure to comment below where folks can find it if they're interested in checking it out, because I'm sure some folks would be, seeing if things change between now and then and how the final thing turned out. Anyway, until the next one of these, everybody, be well, and I'll see you there. Toodles.